This is Real Estate Rookie episode 323.
My system now is I have my contractor come in on every job and just walk through everything we want to do and then just bid a price. And then we set that price, and then that's kind of like his incentive, because it's like, okay, if this job is going to cost us if I'm going to pay you 20 grand and you get it done in 3 weeks and you just made 20 grand in 3 weeks, if I'm going to pay you 20 grand, but you're going to take 8 weeks and you made 20 grand in 8 weeks. So
my name is Ashley Kerr, and I am here with my co-host, Tony J. Robinson.
And welcome to the Real Estate Rookie podcast, where every week, twice a week, we bring you the inspiration, motivation, and stories you need to hear to kickstart your investing journey. And today we're back with another guest. We got Matt Ramirez on the podcast. And Ashley's going to talk a little bit more about Matt as an individual and why his story is so unique. But Matt's going to share a couple of really important things for you. He's going to share the worst way to pay a contractor. He's going to share how a panic attack at work pretty much changed his whole life trajectory. And he's going to talk about how to find off-market deals. So lots of great content coming your way.
One thing that we learn about Matt in this episode, he is going to tell us how he lost 80% of his income during COVID. Then he has these life events that happen and almost forces him to become a real estate investor to survive. He also ends up having to move cross country to live with his father-in-law, and how that actually might have been a good thing for his real estate investing. Matt, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to have a little fun before we actually get into the full episode and play a game. Are you up for it?
Always up for a game.
Okay. So we're going to play two truths and a lie. Okay. I'm going to read these, and I want our audience to guess which is actually the lie. So if you're listening right now, pay attention. Okay. And don't reveal what are the truths before, We've let Tony guess, okay? Let Tony be our guesser, okay?
Perfect.
Okay, so here are the three things. Made 6 figures as an entrepreneur, operator of a corporate-focused fitness company for 10 years. Second one is trained sea animals and performed on stage weekly with a walrus named Gus for 5 years. And the third is you were a part-time stuntman on 50 different TV shows and movies. So, Tony, what do you think is the lie?
I feel like the most outrageous one is usually the truth. So I'm going to say the lie was a part-time stuntman on 50 TV shows and movies.
Okay, so
you really were friends with the walrus named Gus is what I'm getting at here. Ash, what about you?
I'm gonna say the corporate focused fitness company for 10 years. I'll say that. I'll say the two more outrageous ones are correct, and I'll say the fitness company for 10 years is a lie.
So I wish I had experience working with walrus, but that one is a lie.
We should have known our producer's imagination was that good.
Right. Yeah. So I did work as I did own a corporate fitness company for about 10 years, and I have been a stuntman since 2015. So almost getting to the 10-year mark.
So Matt, I'm super curious, man. We've had over 300 guests on the Rookie podcast, and I think you might be the first professional stuntman that we've interviewed. How does one even get into that line of work? Is there a stuntman school? Do you have to get a certification? Just give me the quick 30-second background on how you became a stuntman.
Yeah, so it's really, there is no school. I mean, there are schools that you could go to, but there are no requirements as far as getting into becoming a stunt performer. Essentially, it's the same as becoming an actor. You just gotta be in LA mostly. You could be in Atlanta now and a couple other places, but you just have to be in the scene, and then you just have to kind of network with the right people and just find auditions and different things. And it's really just a networking game. I mean, obviously you have to have the skill set and put in the reps to get there, but at the end of the day, it comes down to being in the right place, right time, and kind of going from there.
Ash, the way you face planted off the wake boat last weekend, I feel like you might have a future in
and I took it like a champ.
There you go.
You took it like a champ. So Matt, I guess I'm super curious, man. How does one go from kind of being a stuntman to then being a gym owner to then being a real estate investor? Like, what was the kind of progression there for you?
So as far as that goes, it was really the pandemic. So in 2020, business was doing pretty good. We were probably doing like 12 to 15 grand a month, with the corporate wellness. And then, I was doing stunt work a little bit on the side as well. And then, pandemic really just flipped our lives upside down. We had just had a baby, and my wife and I were living in Santa Barbara at the time. And like quickly within probably 3 months, lost like 80% of my income, just because all my contracts were with companies and everyone went to work from home. So I had no money coming in from that. And then the film industry shut down. So I had no money coming in from that. I did have a couple clients that I was seeing just via Zoom. So that kind of saved me a little bit. But, yeah, that was kind of the start of it. And then, I actually did have a backup plan already in place, like not because of the pandemic, but I wanted to step out of the corporate wellness realm. And I was trying to become a firefighter for LA Fire Department. And I had a couple friends that were already like on the department. They're like, oh yeah, you're shoo-in. Like you already like got a company. You're like well set up for that. You're pretty fit, not as fit as Tony Robinson, but you're up there. And then I was going along in that process, and then I got to the last interview. And from that point, it was going to be one interview and then go to the fire academy. So we had about like 3 to 6 months before really anything started. So my wife and I decided to just take kind of a road trip and go to Tennessee, just because we knew we had some downtime, and I was just working remotely anyways. And on the way out there, I got a call, or I guess it was probably email, and they're like, oh, unfortunately, you haven't been chosen for the last interview. Like you've been cut from the process. And it's kind of one of those moments, just stomach dropped. And I was like, but like, what do you mean? Like, I just lost all my income. Like, this is my next play. Like, where do I go from here? And, yeah, that was kind of the start for searching for something new. And during that process is when I came across, originally the BiggerPockets, the OG podcast, and I started listening to it, but really like listening to those episodes, I was like, oh man, this guy's a neurosurgeon. Like I'm not smart enough to like get into real estate, or this person's got like 100 houses. Like how am I ever going to get to that point? And then luckily I came across your guys' podcast, and there's just people that I felt were relatable. And I was like, wait a minute, like I feel like I'm in the same walk of life as them. Like I can figure this out. And that was kind of the beginning of my real estate journey.
So once you started doing all this research, was your wife on board as to you're going to completely change what you're doing and kind of start into this new business?
Yeah, I mean, she was on board from the sense of like, at the time, like really like, I was like, well, I lost my business. Like firefighting didn't work out, at least at the moment. And then stunts was still shut down. So I was like, I don't know what else I'm going to do. So she was on board just because she's like, well, we got to do something to make money. So like, why not try something new?
So just one thing I want to just pause on really quickly, Matt, because you're talking about this very, very calmly now, but I would assume in that moment there was maybe a level of stress that you were dealing with. You know, your business comes to, you know, do a fraction of what it was doing before. Your side hustle, the whole industry gets shut down, and then this other kind of steady, stable job as a firefighter, you know, you end up not being able to take that opportunity as well. So just like in that moment, what was kind of going through your mind? Like, were you in survival mode? Were you going crazy? Like, how does one kind of deal with that kind of setback?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like when we got to Tennessee, is kind of I was looking at jobs every single day and like, what can I do to make money? And at one point, I just hit the panic button and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna get a sales job. And it ended up being like a cold calling And actually, I guess to take a step back, first I was like, all right, like I can flip a house. I can figure it out. My father-in-law, who lives in Tennessee, who we were living with at the time in his guest house, is used to be a contractor. And I was like, I know I can use him to like help me. Just like I'll find a house and I can renovate it with him and we'll get the ball going. But I went to get, cause I didn't know about hard money or anything like that. So I went to get pre-approved and the lender was like, no, like you were making good money, but you're not now. And I was like, well, but I have like, the stunt income and it's starting to ramp back up. And I don't know, different lenders might have said different things, but he was like, no, cause we pretty much look at that like it's a business. So since you had a decline last year, you need 2 more years of like an incline in the stunt in that world in order for us to lend to you. So then I was like, all right. So then I hit the panic button there, went and got a 9 to 5, and ended up working there and just hating every day of it, just cold calling. And I was like, this is not me. Like, I'm not meant to like be sitting in an office doing a job like this. But fortunately through that job, we were able to buy our first property, which when I got it under contract, my intention was to flip it. And then my wife, just dropped the bomb and was like, oh, we're actually pregnant and having another baby. So we need to get out of my father's house and like live in this house ourselves. So I was like, well, all right, here we go. So we ended up, that one still need to be renovated, but instead of flipping that one, we just moved into it. And then I was probably about 3 weeks into the job and I had I don't know if you call it a panic attack or what happened, but just passed out essentially like at my desk, and my wife took me to urgent care and everything checked out luckily, but I ended up putting in my 2 weeks. So I'm pretty sure I bought that house or like closed on that house without even having a job. So I don't know if there's such thing, but I think I might have job hacked myself into the house.
That's what I wanted to ask is how long did you have to have your pay stubs for to get that financing lined up? Because, they're saying for a business, you need 2 years of income for your business. But then for a job, it doesn't seem like you worked there for 2 years. And is it 4 weeks of paychecks you need, or how was that for you?
So, and it might be different in like different areas, but I learned that from this show. And I don't know if it was you, Ashley, or you, Tony, that said this, but one of you was talking about how somebody kind of did this and just got their first pay stub and then was able to go do it. So that's literally what I did. It
was probably maybe my sister, because she didn't even have her pay stub yet. She just had her offer letter that she was starting like a month or something like that. Yeah.
Same thing happened to me on my first deal. I had gotten a new job and they approved me based on that offer letter as well. So it is a common thing that some lenders will do.
But isn't that crazy, that comparison of like, okay, you're an entrepreneur, you need 2 years of your tax return to show income, but
you're an employee.
That's way better.
That was the crazy part about it too, because like with the stunts, like I wasn't like killing stunt world, but like I think in 2019 or 2020 even maybe, my tax return said I made like $80K, and then this job it was like entry level, so starting out at like 50 or 55K, and I was like, wait, I made more than this last year, but like you won't approve me because it was a decline from the year before, but now you're approving me based off this lower number. And I was just like one of those things where I was like, all right, just threw my hands up. I was whatever you say.
How long did you actually work at the job for then?
Honestly, I think it was like right at a month, because I had that like panic attack or whatever, took like 2-3 days off. And then I went in and put in my 2 weeks, but they were like, well, like we have like sensitive information. So like if you're quitting, like this is your last day. And I was like, all right.
Like that's a bad thing. Like, oh, you.
Yeah. I was like, if I must.
But Matt, can I ask, like, what was the plan? Because your other sources of income had still kind of been impacted. This was supposed to be the kind of thing that kind of got you over the hump, at least for a little while. You bought this house with the intention of flipping it, but it sounds like now this became your primary residence. what was the plan in that moment to like, I guess survive and put food on the table and kind of keep the income flowing in?
Yeah. So fortunately at this time, so now we're like early 2021. So the film industry had opened back up and I was doing stunt work again. And just because of like proximity, like living in Tennessee, the cost of living was so much more affordable than California. I was at a point where I was able to make enough just based off of the stunt work, and it was tight, and it definitely like wasn't at all where I wanted to be financially, but I just knew like, okay, like I'm making enough that we can get by, and then I'll figure out what to do from here. And I was still interested in real estate, but that was still actually before I even did my first real flip.
So let's talk about the first flip, because the first property you actually moved into and made it your primary, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then you're going on and you're buying the next property. How long after that first initial purchase did you find your actual first investment property?
So it was probably about like 3 to 6 months, somewhere in that window, because I definitely had a lot of just analysis paralysis and just really scared to take the leap of faith. And then finally it was actually one of my cousins that kind of pointed this out to me, and he's like, well, you've already done a flip. And I was like, no, I haven't. And he's like, you have this house that you live in, you renovated and added value. And I was like, yeah, but I haven't sold it. And he's like, well, go out, and I forgot what it's called, but essentially when you have a realtor come and tell you like what they think your house is worth. So he's like, go out and have a realtor come over and just tell you how much they think the house is worth. And we bought the house for $225, and then the realtor was like, yeah, you could probably sell it today for $280. So it's like, well, there you go. Like, you've already proven that like you can make money doing
Add
this.
value.
Yeah, add value. So then I was like, all right. So then, and luckily, like at this point, I'm like a year into listening to BiggerPockets. So I know about hard money. I know about wholesalers. Granted, I didn't have any like in my pocket, but I just started doing my homework and connected with a wholesaler, and then ended up using hard money to get myself into my first flip.
I think a really big common question is, how do you get hard money as a rookie investor, especially with having no experience? And even though you did your primary residence, there wasn't that actual, appraisal or that sold comp to kind of show what you had done there. How did you kind of find a hard money lender that would lend to you?
So for me, I found one that would lend to any rookie or really anyone, and they just had higher rates and higher points up front. And then once you were vetted, I think once you had done 4 deals with them, then you got like kind of a veteran package, or your rates got lowered. But in the beginning, yeah, I mean, because of that risk they're taking on you, they just charge more up front, and you're kind of just paying for it in that sense.
But you factored into your numbers so that it all works out. So you're still making a profit on it. Yeah.
And that was the thing too. Like at the time, like I didn't really, because I didn't have much income coming in, I had a little bit from the stunt world. I was like, well, if I make 10, 15K, like that's a lot more money than I'm making not doing anything else. So I kind of, the margins were like pretty tight on that first one. And honestly, the market, I won't say it necessarily like saved me, because I definitely, even if I was wrong, I would have made like 10, 15,000. But because the market was so good in 2021, I made a lot more than I thought I was going to make.
Matt, if I can ask, right, I think a lot of new investors feel like they have to kind of have all the answers before they get started. We actually just recorded another podcast episode earlier today, and that same guest kind of touched on that same idea about like, you have to push past that fear of not knowing kind of the finish line and just knowing the next step. But for you, like with this rehab, I mean, you came from a totally different world, fitness, entertainment industry. How did you even educate yourself on, hey, what are the steps of rehabbing a home? Were you doing YouTube University? Was there some other resource you had? Like, how did you even know what to do?
Yeah. So that's where I was like super fortunate and blessed, in the sense that my father-in-law, who lives out in Chattanooga, was a retired contractor, and I kind of brought him out of retirement and was like, hey, help your grandkids and your family by helping me and teaching me what you know. And, so he came alongside me on the first 2 flips I did and, just kind of taught me, some basic drywalling and painting and stuff. And I by no means picked it up quickly or am good at it, but, I learned what I needed to learn to get through those first couple deals.
So, Matt, were you DIYing, it sounds like, on a lot of those, or were you bringing in subs, or how did you kind of manage the workload?
Yeah, so the first 2 flips I did, it was 100% DIY. Like, it was just me and my father-in-law, and we did everything from painting, installation, some basic plumbing. Yeah, I mean, they were a little bit more cosmetic flips. The first 2 at least, but definitely it was all us.
And then have you progressed to using contractors? Actually, we haven't even touched on how many flips you've done yet. Do you want to just give us that little breakdown first as to how many you've actually completed since that first one?
I think I just sold one, closed on one yesterday that I sold. I think that was number 10. And then I'm working, I have 2 going on right now. So.
And what time frame is this in? This is a little over a year?
Yeah, about a year and a half.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Congratulations.
I think that's something we really need to go into detail on here is how were you able to scale and take on that many flips at once? Because here you are, your first investment property, it's you and your father-in-law in there doing the DIY. So how were you able to scale your business so you're able to do that many flips within a year and a half?
Yeah, so it's really, I mean, it's like you said, like, I mean, just go back to the question, like scaling, I had no clue how to do it at first, and I still can't say I really know how to do it. But, the third one I took on was when I tried to cause my father-in-law was kind of a little burnt out and just like, and the house that I purchased was a little further out. So he didn't want to drive out there every day. So I was like, no problem. Like I'll hire a contractor. Like I'll just kind of go out on my own. And that one was, by far the biggest learning lesson. That's the only one to this day that I actually lost money on. Just cause there's so many lessons for me to learn along the way. And it was through that one that I kind of developed most of the relationships I have now. Like my contractor that I have now, I found through that job, but he was the 3rd contractor I hired for that one house. Which is how I ended up losing so much money, is just because I kept hiring people and firing them and just kind of jumping from one to the next. But it was definitely a process to get to the point I'm at now.
I just want to give a quick shout out. Episode 311 with a guest by the name of Sean Kelly. He breaks down how he DIY'd, I think all of his rehabs, at least the first several as well, similar to you, Matt. But if you guys are looking for kind of a masterclass breakdown on how to DIY your own rehab, episode 311 with Sean Kelly would be a great resource. So Matt, just going back to you. So you said that you had to hire and fire a lot of people with that first one you kind of did on your own. I think that's the fear for a lot of rookies who are thinking about flipping properties, is that they're going to get scammed by a contractor. They're going to get bad work. That someone's going to run off with their money. What were your steps for sourcing these different folks you were working with, the different subcontractors and contractors? And I guess what were some of the lessons you learned that you've applied to your future deals?
Yeah. So as far as sourcing, really, I still rely pretty heavily on this. There's a local Facebook page here in Chattanooga, where you can just put in ask for what you're looking for as far as businesses go. And I mean, it's not specific to real estate, but I just said I was looking for, I think originally I might have said I was looking for a contractor, but anyways, said I was looking for a contractor, and I just hired this guy because I interviewed, I think 3 of them, and I made the mistake of just hiring the one that I jived with best. I was like, oh, he's young. He's, entrepreneur. Yeah, you got the job. And, I didn't realize at the time that he actually didn't really have much, construction knowledge, because there's a thing that I didn't know in Tennessee at the time. but you can essentially get your contractor's license in Tennessee without any work experience. It's just a test that you have to pass, and anyone can more or less hack the test. So he had a crew, but he himself had never really done construction. And his crew was, I won't say they were awful, but they were learning, and I was not in a position where I could afford to pay someone to learn. So I ended up letting him go, and then you would have thought I would have learned from the first time, but I went the exact same route, went on the Facebook group, hired another guy that then I was charging me by hour, which was another mistake I learned. Like, never hire a contractor, and at least in my opinion, and pay him by hour, because he was just dragging his feet. And I think 3 weeks went by and they had put up some trim, and that's about it. And I was like, what do you guys do all day? And they're like, oh, well, we got to fix this and fix that, and just blaming on the other contractors, which some of that was probably true, but I think most of it was just them dragging their feet. And then through that process, so the first crew that I hired, at one point, one of their cousins came in and just was like essentially showing them how to do drywall. And that was kind of like one of the first red flags. I was like, wait, you guys don't know how to do drywall? And, anyways, I got that cousin's number just randomly, and he reached out to me like a month later and was like, hey, if you ever have any other work. I was like, yeah, I need you, like, yesterday. So he came in and just kind of saved me towards the end. And, that was, flip number 3, and we're on 12 now, and I'm still with that same one.
I just got to add really quick, like what a like a nerve-wracking thing to walk into as an investor, to see the guy that you hired to hang your drywall getting coached by someone else on how to hang drywall. Like, it's like the ultimate red flag. Like, the only thing that might be worse is them, like, I don't know, like having a YouTube video up, like hanging drywall 101 or something.
Yeah, that was pretty much the extent of it, though. I mean, yeah, those two go hand in hand.
Well, Matt, Tony and I have definitely had similar experiences where we've had to fire contractors during the middle of projects and go with someone else. What was the final decision of it is going to be more cost effective in my mind to fire them than to just continue the project? Because for me, it was I let it go on for a while because I just thought it's going to be, we're going to have to stall the project. We're going to have to, wait and find new contractors. We don't know when they will start. Do we take the risk and fire these ones, or is it worth the wait to find new contractors? So what kind of went through your mind during that process of I need to fire them now?
Yeah. So with that first crew, it was really I felt like I didn't have a choice, because it's just very obvious. After the first week and a half, 2 weeks, they don't know what they're doing. So it's just I can't afford to let this run to the very end and then find out oh, I actually have to redo everything. So it's kind of just cutting my losses there and just letting them go. With the second crew, that I just kind of lucked out timing wise. I was scared of letting them go and not having someone else to come in. And that's when my contractor I have now reached out to me and was like, hey, if you ever need any work done, here's my number, I'm available, and I was like, yeah. So I essentially the next day went to the existing contractor and just let him go. And then that guy started a couple days later. So, I mean, if it wasn't for him reaching out to me, I probably would have let it drag on for another couple weeks, and who knows where that would have gone. But
yeah, we Tony and I definitely struggled with that for a little bit on 2 of our projects, of having to make that switch to a different contractor.
But you mentioned, Matt, about the paying by the hour. Just before we move on, I want to get your insights on that. What is the downside to paying by the hour, and what is the better alternative?
So I would say the downside to paying by the hour is just, I feel like it just gives the contractor, whoever you're paying, I guess, by the hour, just the opportunity to just kind of drag their feet, and, a job that might take them 2 hours, they're going to do in 4 hours, because you're paying them by the hours. So they have no no incentive to work faster and work harder. So I would say that's the biggest downside. It's just there's more incentive for them to work slower than there is faster. And then as far as the alternative, like my system now is, even though I'm going to hire them no matter what, just because we have a good thing going, I have my contractor come in on every job and just walk through everything we want to do and then just bid a price. And then we set that price, and then that's kind of like his incentive. Cause it's like, okay, if this job is going to cost us if I'm going to pay you 20 grand and you get it done in 3 weeks and you just made 20 grand in 3 weeks, if I'm going to pay you 20 grand, but you're going to take 8 weeks and you made 20 grand in 8 weeks. So he's got that incentive to just work a lot harder and work a lot faster. And like, I mean, I'll show up to my jobs on Saturdays at 6 p.m. and they're there just working. I mean, like him and his crew, yeah, just so blessed to have them because they're just workhorses and they get it done. And I mean, if I had that last guy I was paying by the hour, like I would probably be paying him twice as much as my current crew.
Yeah, the right crew makes all the difference when you're honestly, even taking a step back, the right team as a real estate investor is probably one of the most important things to get right. Because if you can surround yourself with the right boots on the ground, with the right contractor, with the right property manager, with the right whoever, it makes your job as the investor, which is really trying to find the deals and maximize the profitability, makes that job easier. But I guess on that note, right, finding the deals, Matt, what steps have you taken to find out of these, I guess, 11 or 12 properties you've done or in the progress of completing? How are you finding these deals? Are they all MLS? Are you going direct to seller? Are you using a wholesaler? What methods have you used?
So I've kind of used them all. I think out of the 12, I bought 3 on market, and then the other 9 have been off market. I would say I had a good wholesaler that I was working with pretty consistently, and I probably bought 6 deals with them. And it was just I literally got to the point where I was like, am I doing something wrong? Like, this seems like it's almost too easy right now. Like, I have this person feeding me deals. Like, I got a good crew. Like, just everything's lining up. And then, I didn't hear from them for a while, and I reached out to them, and they just kind of ghosted me. And then finally one of their employees reached out to me and was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. They let me go." And they just shut down shop. And I don't know what happened, but, anyways, that was the beginning of this year. And at that point I was like, what do I do now?
Well, let me ask that question. I mean, how did you find that first wholesaler? Because I think for a new flipper, the deal flow is oftentimes one of the biggest constraints is how do I find these good off-market deals? So what steps did you take, Matt, to find that first wholesaler? And then once that one kind of shut down shop, what steps did you take to find that next wholesaler?
So that first one I found through our local real estate RIA or meetup group or whatnot. I think I was on their Facebook group, and another wholesaler was posting something, and then I just started scrubbing through the Facebook group and looking for all the wholesalers and just either emailed or called all of them just to get on their list. And then this one just seemed to be the most consistent as far as just putting out deals. And then I guess as far as the second part goes, just luckily from being in this area and doing the real estate for the last year and a half, I kind of knew, even if I wasn't working of them, I kind of knew of and about a few other wholesalers. So I just kind of immediately started reaching out to them and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for deals if you have anything." And then that's kind of now the last couple of deals have been through various different wholesalers. I haven't really found one that feeds me my deals like the original one was. But
Tony, I'm curious how you are sourcing deals right now.
Yeah. So honestly, we haven't been buying as much on the single family side right now. We're looking more into the commercial space. So, my team and I are really just trying to network with commercial brokers at the moment to find most of our deals. So, we just got a purchase agreement or at least an LOI, that we agreed to over the weekend for a hotel in Utah. And on that deal, like it was just us networking with a broker that I met last summer that ended up having another deal in that same city. So that's kind of been our approach on the commercial side. But on the single family space, a lot of our deals honestly have just kind of come from relationships. So we have relationships with realtors that send us off market deals, whether it's a pocket listing or maybe a wholesale deal that they found. We do know some wholesalers in the markets where we flip. And really, yeah, it's been a lot of relationships for us. What about you, Ash?
Yeah, relationship based is such a big way to get properties, but really a lot of it is referrals as far as like word of mouth. So somebody saying like, oh, my aunt is selling a property. Daryl was working on a property the other day and somebody stopped and was like, I want to rent this because I'm going to sell my house. So right away, when Daryl tells me this, I'm like, you call him back right now and tell him you want to come and see his house and we could buy his house and he can rent this apartment. It's a win-win. But also we have a property under contract that's on the MLS. And then the other property that's under contract right now was a word of mouth. One of my dad's best friends, his mom's house that we're buying. So that's really been the biggest deal source for us right now.
As just, have you cold called before? Have you done like just straight cold calling owners?
I actually had, I have before a couple times, but I actually had Nate Robbins here, who is actually going to be a guest on our episode because of my experience with him. So he came to visit me and we're just driving to get a chai tea and he sees this house with like letters in the window, which usually can signal that somebody is not living there, or maybe they are, but there's, a third-party company taking care of the property, doing the lawn maintenance, or the bank has foreclosed on it, or there's like a violation, whatever it is. So he found the owners and he cold called them and he didn't get any response, but it was like so nerve-wracking for me because I do not like cold calling. And then he actually found somebody who was related to the person that owns the property. And he's like, they live like 5 minutes from you. I'm going to drive over there and go talk to them. And that even more was like, I'm not going to go. You guys just go. I'll stay here. And he was like, the lady was so nice. Like, you can't be afraid of those things. And so that's why I have Daryl. He does all like the direct mail, the cold calling, he'll door knock, no problem. But for me, that's like out of my comfort zone. And I'd rather have, my partner do that.
Someone else do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's always like leaning into where your strengths are as a real estate investor, right? And each of us has to kind of know where we kind of naturally thrive. Matt, just one other follow-up question for you on the wholesaler piece. So you said that you reached out to all these different wholesalers. What kind of information were you giving them about you as a buyer, and how were you kind of able to tell between who the good wholesalers were versus the not so good? Because I've shared like my email address on Instagram before and I say, hey, send me deals if you're in this market. And a lot of times I get like just things that aren't good deals. So how do you kind of suss out between the good and the bad? And then what information are you giving them about yourself?
Yeah. So as far as the information, I mean, I think I'm just essentially kind of telling them where I'm buying. Like for me personally, I'm mostly focused on flipping single family homes right now. So I kind of just share that and then just the general area. And then I honestly haven't figured out how to tell, like just by talking to them, like the good and bad ones. That really just comes down to like once like I get on their radar and they start sending me deals, it's like, I'll just start looking at the deals and use PropStream and comp them out. And with that, I can kind of just tell like, okay, this guy just sent me like 5 properties in a row that are all junk. And I'm like, can't really flip any of these. Like I would be in the negative on all of them versus this guy. Like maybe he just sent me 2 in the last month, but both of them seem pretty profitable. So just kind of going down that path.
Matt, if you had to give 3 pieces of advice to somebody who's starting out flipping a house, what are the 3 things they should focus on to maximize value of that property? To
maximize value, I would say the biggest things are kind of curb appeal, because obviously like when you come up to the house, that's, the first thing you're going to see. And then even going just back before you even get to the house, like looking at Redfin or Zillow or whatever you use, like the first photo you see is the exterior of the house. So making sure that looks nice, because I feel like a lot of people focus on the inside so much that they kind of forget about the outside. And it's like, oh, I just kept the old mailbox that's fallen over, and that's like right in the center of the frame of my photo. So that's big thing. And you don't have to do anything fancy, but just some landscaping and just maybe a new mailbox and, obviously fresh paint and whatnot. And then I'll go from there to the kitchen, because I feel like for a lot of people, that's kind of the first area they walk into, even if it's not, I mean, obviously, usually it's not the first room you walk into, but a lot of people kind of just walk straight through the living room or whatever, don't really pay too much attention to that and just go to the kitchen. So if you can kind of create that wow factor in the kitchen, which is one of the things that we go for. And then the third thing, which I think I actually stole this from AJ Osborne. Is that his name? He's like a
self-storage guy.
Oh, no, not AJ. Who's the one that's
James Daynard.
Yeah, one of them. And he was talking about just value add in the bathroom and just doing like tile floors versus like LVP, just because he's like, at the end of the day, it's going to cost you pretty much the same price, like maybe like, $50 more or something. So just things like that. If like we always tile the bathroom floors and like put in tile in the background, just little things where you can add a lot of value without adding a lot of price out of your pocket. So yeah, I guess just starting with the outside of the house, then moving to the kitchen and then the bathrooms. And those are the biggest 3 areas. I feel like if you can control those 3 areas, then the rest you can kind of play with, and you'll definitely win, or hopefully win.
So Matt, one of the questions I always have for our friends and the guests that flip homes is the systems they're using to kind of make this whole operation run efficiently. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions and just let me know what system, software, whatever, we can do that now. Just what kind of systems you're using to manage that. So first, like when it comes to budgeting, how do you keep track of the money coming in and out for your flips and kind of comparing that to your original budget versus what you actually spent?
Yeah. So essentially I have 2 spreadsheets that I use, and it's, very basic, like Google spreadsheets. Like I don't pay for software as far as that goes. But I have one of my like initial budget that I create. And then once I go live with a project, I have another, and then I just kind of plug and play all those numbers. And then I'm able to compare of like what I originally thought I was to where I'm actually at. So that's like it's pretty basic, to be honest. And I just enter everything myself. Like I don't have anyone doing the counting for me, but kind of helps me keep on track.
And then in terms of like scheduling, are your contractor, is your GC the one that's kind of scheduling all the subs at this point, or are you manually scheduling the subs yourself? And if so, do you have like a tool for, making sure that your countertop guy is going in before your guy doing the backsplash?
I don't. And that's something that I'm still kind of learning the process on. So I am the one that hires out all the subs and kind of sets the schedule for everyone. I kind of know just from trial and error of like who needs to go in when, and like I've made that mistake before of like my hardwood floors one time I had done before we painted, just because I didn't know and I didn't really think about it. And he was like, "What are you doing?" But yeah, I don't have a system for it. It's just kind of in my head. And yeah, to be honest, that's one of my goals for this year, is just to like get better at systems and processes as far as that stuff goes.
Well, Matt, I want to take us to our rookie request line. And this is where a rookie investor sends in a question for a guest to answer on our show. And if you would like to leave us a question, you can go to biggerpockets.com/reply. So today's question is from Tyson Mazingo. Okay, I am having trouble with finding a market as well as trying to determine what types of deals I will do in different situations. My plan is to find a very low cost area to invest in since I have very little money to get started. I want to flip a couple properties to build up capital and then begin to burr as much as I can, continuing to flip some deals at the same time. Here are what my problems are. 1, what metrics should I use to find a market? If you can break it down step by step, that would be amazing. Number 2, how do you decide if a deal would be better suited to flip versus burr? I I intend to do both to continually build capital as well as cash flow, but I need to figure out how to decide which strategy I will use for each specific deal. So Matt, the first question is how to find a market. So how did you decide on the market that you're investing in?
So I kind of just decided on the market that I was in, because me personally, especially the approach that I was first taking, is I was completely hands-on. So I wanted to work within a market that was 30 minutes to an hour of my house, so I could realistically drive there every day and be the one swinging the hammer and hanging the drywall and doing the work. So I would say, if that's possible, I feel like that's the easiest place to start, is just start in your own backyard. Obviously, depending on where you are, like, I was in Santa Barbara prior to this, and I don't see a way that I could have started with multi-million-dollar homes, flipping those. So yeah, you kind of just have to hopefully start with where you are. But then if that doesn't work, then I would say the next thing is just kind of looking around and starting with maybe where you have connections, because that's going to be the next biggest thing, is who do you know in those areas that can help you out and be the boots on the ground for you.
Yeah, that's great. As to where you have an opportunity or an advantage, maybe that's knowing someone, or maybe you grew up there and you know the streets. There's something to give you that little bit of edge and make you feel a little bit more confident. Okay, so the second part of this question was, how do I decide if a deal would be better as a BRRRR property to rehab it and rent it out, or to flip the property?
So I think that's just up to each individual and their kind of finances and what they have going on. Because I guess if you have the money and you do a perfect BRRRR, then yeah, you can kind of just keep going with it. But I actually just finished my first BRRRR about, I don't know. Well, I'm just actually waiting for the money to come through today. But just finished the project like about a month or two ago and got some renters in it. And I'm not leaving a ton of money in, but I'm going to have to leave in, I found out, about 30 grand into it. And luckily, because of the flips and I have that income coming in, like I'm okay with not having that money, and it's not going to hurt me per se to not be able to recycle that money right away. But I think it really comes down to that. Like if you were to do the numbers and it turns out like, hey, I need that 30K in order to keep the ball moving, then flip it, because then you can take that 30K, buy another house. And then once you kind of build up a nest egg, then you can kind of go back to the BRRRR method. But I think it's just deal by deal and just what kind of resources you have under your belt.
And I think another thing to point out too, Matt, is you did a great job of, becoming experienced and knowledgeable at flipping a house first before you went in and did this BRRRR. Like you focused on that one strategy before trying to navigate 2 or 3 different strategies at once. And that would be my advice to Tyson, is to pick one market and pick one strategy to start and kind of get a feel for that one strategy and become knowledgeable and confident in it, and then kind of branch off and do something, because you're going to have a lot more deals to vet, to analyze if you're trying to go after more than one strategy. And you're also going to be building systems and processes for 2 different types of strategies also, which is just going to kind of weigh you down, and you won't be able to grow and scale as fast too.
Yeah, I will say my third flip that I did, I actually went into it thinking it was going to be a BRRRR, and something that I stole from one of his episodes was doing the rent by the room. So I took a 4-bedroom house, turned into a 7-bedroom, 4-bath. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Like I'm going to just make so much money, and just like spent way too much money, went way over budget, realized I couldn't BRRRR it, and then had to flip it. And then it turns out that not that many people want a 7-bedroom, 4-bath house that's just, only 2,200 square feet or something like that.
Lessons learned though, right? And that's the part of being an investor, is each deal kind of teaches you something new, brother. So I'm happy to hear that you learned something at least. Cool, man. So last thing we'll finish out with is our rookie exam. So Matt, these are the 3 most important questions you'll ever be asked in your entire life. So are you ready for question number 1?
I'll try.
All right, man. What's one actionable thing people should do after listening to your episode?
I think just reaching out, like if you're interested in whether it's flipping or any aspect of real estate, finding one person that you can reach out to. I think that was a game changer for me. I would listen to an episode, and if it was somebody I jived with, I would literally just like DM them on Instagram or just find a way to reach out. Even if it's, just going to your local meetup, but I would say just starting by just networking and putting yourself out there.
The second question, what is one tool, software, or app that you use in your business?
A prop stream is definitely probably the most important one that I use, because I probably comp out 2-3 houses a day, and I'm constantly looking at things. And if it wasn't for prop stream, I'm sure there's other software, but I don't know how people comp outside of that.
All right. And then question number 3. Where do you plan on being in 5 years, Matt?
So 5-year plan would be essentially to be financially free from the aspect of just having enough rentals and passive income that I truly do love flipping, and I don't see myself stop doing it anytime soon, but I would just like to have that comfort level of knowing like, if I want to take this year off and go travel in Europe with my family, like I can do that. And I'm in a place where I can dictate what my life looks like on a day-to-day basis.
Love that, man. Yeah, well, we're excited to see you hit that 5-year goal. Before we wrap things up today, I just want to give a quick shout out to this week's Rookie Rockstar is Michael Mills. And Michael says, finally sold our first flip, 8 months of work, and then under contract to sell for 4 months. I was beginning to think it would never happen. Michael, kudos to you for getting that first flip done, and we're excited to see where your next one takes you.
Matt, can you let everyone know where they can reach out to you and find out some more information about you?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way probably is Instagram. It's very fancy. It's Matt's MATTS _, because I was late to the game, adventure. And if you really just are bored and want something entertaining, you can just Google Matt Ramirez stunts and watch my stunt reel.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time to educate our listeners on your real estate investing journey. I'm Ashley at Wealth from Rentals, and he's Tony at Tony J. Robinson on Instagram. And we will be back on Saturday with a rookie reply.